I first met UMB when I was at the crossroads of my business. I had a serious problem, and UMB has made it possible for me to still stand today. How did they do this? They did not work and put me in a box. They looked at me as an individual and got a product for me which helped me to survive the period. Banks should look at it and see how they can also go that way to be able to meet individual customers, tailor products to suit the individual customers, and not to just box everybody together.
Now, it also leads us to believe in another myth, and that's one of the myths that the minister also talked about. GDP is one of the things I don't listen to when we talk about GDP growth. GDP comprises of all the wealth created here, including the wealth which is sent outside. That's well known. I don't see any African country talking about gross national product or gross national income, which consists of the income retained here. Because until you stimulate income here, you cannot stimulate growth. Now, let's stick to that a bit. The problem with measuring GDP also is a deception. And you can check this. Every single African country which has been added to the so-called fastest growing economies over the last 30 years has ended up going to IMF after 5 years of becoming the fastest growing economy. You can check that fact. So Africans tend to individualize themselves and want to rush to be classified as the fastest growing economy. So in the next few years, they become poor, and then they have to go and borrow more money. Instead of acting together and looking at how do we create the value chain and increase domestic wealth so that we don't necessarily need to be beggars. So GDP can deceive politicians to believe that we are growing, when actually, again, as the minister said, socially, our people are not being taken out of poverty. And it's important that as entrepreneurs, we pay less attention to measuring our growth by GDP, and rather measure it by the number of jobs we create, the amount of wealth we stimulate, and the amount of value we add locally. It is only with that we can attract foreign investors to come and work with us. That is what China did, and that is why today China has more foreign direct investors than the US. And that's the point I'm trying to make. The next thing is, because we are a divided people, we need to create a new class of people who aggregate and consolidate. What do I mean by that? If you take the average African businessman, and I take this bottle of water that I've been drinking, they cannot produce the volumes that will meet the requirements of a 1.3 billion population market for the AfCFTA and even to export, which is the reason why Africa's contribution to global trade is only 3%. Now, Singapore is about the size of Accra. In fact, bigger than Accra, but about less than a third of the size of Lagos. Singapore's contribution to global trade is over 4%. In other words, Singapore Island contributes more to global trade than the whole of Africa put together. And that type of data should tell you that if we acted together, things will change almost instantly. The last time I saw African leaders gather in Russia, that was about 4 years ago or so, I was asking myself whether African leaders were aware that Africa's purchase power parity, when you talk about GDP, even GDP in terms of purchase power parity, is 6.6 trillion, which is twice that of Russia, whose purchase power parity was 2.5 trillion. So why did we have to gather there? But if you have a divided mindset, that's what happens. Now, because our leaders are unable to come together and act together, what entrepreneurs must do is to aggregate. And I believe that a new class of entrepreneurs who can pick this bottle of water where somebody is manufacturing it in Kampala for just 10,000 volumes and aggregate it with somebody in Kenya, and another person in Tanzania, create the volume which individuals in Africa cannot otherwise create. In fact, a friend of mine put it differently. He said, Africa must come to the point where we will create a partnership of rivals, where people who are rivals can actually work together, because we need to satisfy the volumes. And if we don't satisfy the volumes, we cannot make a significant contribution to global trade or turn this big market we already have into the advantage that is needed. Now, we also need to build trust. Now, if we don't consciously build trust in a continent where we have been divided by languages, Francophone think differently from Anglophone, and therefore Anglophone businessmen will deal with UK and US, whilst Francophone businessmen will deal with Paris and Belgium and Switzerland. If we don't build trust among ourselves, it becomes very difficult for us to be able to work together. And I'm not talking theory. You heard the introduction. I started a small law firm from Ghana, managed to collaborate with others and expanded to 6 African countries and created a network over 30 African countries. It's doable. And I'm talking about a law firm that, cuts across the divide. And today, last year, we won Africa's Law Firm of the Year, large practice. So I'm talking about something which is doable. And it is only doable when we collaborate, aggregate our resources, even if we have to compete. Rivals can still collaborate. It's very important. The other mindset we need to overcome is the religious mindset. There's a downside of religion. Religion can either be an impetus for you to create because God charged us to dominate the earth and its resources, or it can be an impetus for you to become lazy and fold your arms and expect miracles because manna is going to fall from heaven. It seems to me that religion in Africa has created a second type of impetus more. And for me, the more we can get our religious leaders to stop asking people to go to church and they pray for miracles and say, I claim it. They claim the miracle. Now, the Bible I read, where St. Paul talks about faith, he says faith is the substance of things hoped for. Substance means that it is real. And if it is real, it means I'm working towards it. I am not praying and just saying I receive it. You pray quietly, you hope for it, but when you start working towards it, and every single day you are doing something about it, it is a demonstration that you believe that God can let it happen. That is how we created a law firm of currently over 120 lawyers scattered across the continent, from a law firm which started with just 2 people. We created it by every single day doing something about it, collaborating across the continent, overcoming the divide of languages. And if you can do it in a law firm, because in Africa, every country has a restriction as to the fact that lawyers from one country cannot practice in another country. If you can do it in a law firm, you can do it in every business. There is no such restrictions about export of goods. In fact, I have told people that much as I'm a big fan of AfCFTA and participated in the process of the private sector in the AfCFTA, the intra-Africa trade predates the AfCFTA. Indeed, intra-Africa trade grew from 3% to 16% by 2018 before the AfCFTA. Africans are already trading across the border. If you come to West Africa, between Nigeria and Ghana, there are simple foodstuffs like egusi, which is transported between Ghana and Nigeria. When it's shot in Ghana, they buy it from Nigeria. When it's shot in Nigeria, they buy it from Ghana, and vice versa. We already trade. If there is any problem, it is the leaders who have closed the borders or created borders that is causing the problem, and not the people. The entrepreneurs want to liberate their spirit. And I call on entrepreneurs to actually push the leaders to remove the barriers as much as possible. And some are demonstrating the example. I mean, the project in Uganda, the UNOC project, where Uganda's oil is being sent by pipe through Kenya and Tanzania. It's a typical example. There's a West Africa gas pipeline. But I think when the ordinary people, the ordinary entrepreneurs, and I'm not talking about complex FDIs, when the ordinary entrepreneurs trade across the borders, when we liberate their spirit, that's when they will join the value chain. And that is when banning export of minerals enables them to be able to join the value chain. And it's not only Uganda which has done that. Ghana has set also another example of banning export of minerals. Ghana has banned export of bauxite. And there is a good program the government of Ghana is doing, which, if properly carried to its conclusion, will create a large value chain that will integrate everybody into that bauxite to aluminum value chain. And I was happy to hear that Uganda is doing a similar thing for minerals. And that's how you create wealth, not by praying and hoping for miracles, but by entrepreneurs and politicians working together to take advantage of the opportunity in the midst of the challenges. And that's what is important. For Africa, there's already always a bad view about Africa. There's a stereotype, poor continent, overpopulated, etc. What African entrepreneurs should not do is to consolidate and affirm that you don't transform any society by accepting the status quo. You transform a society by rejecting the status quo. And I have said that the biggest problem in Africa is not because we have not got ideas. It is because we are sticking to the ideas which are totally outdated and believe them. Recently, I was on a forum where I heard somebody say, and this is a seasoned banker, Ghanaians haven't got savings culture. Let me illustrate. And I asked him that you are a banker. Why do you believe that Ghanaians don't have a savings culture? And I've heard this said in many African countries. And I was asking him, you're a banker. And as a banker, I expect you to have an entrepreneurial mindset. Tell me, don't you have a grandmother who has got jewelry that he has hiding somewhere? In Africa, we save in jewelry, in land, in property. We save in different ways. Savings simply refers to something you keep that when there is an opportunity, you turn it into cash and use. When you are told you don't have a savings culture, what that does is that it stimulates you to tell people that they must save only in cash. Whilst your people are already saving in land that they are not turning into cash, in property they are not turning into cash, and living in villages where they live on large tracts of land and for sentimental reasons are keeping it and not turning it into cash. What we need to do is to be telling our people that change your type of savings and convert your savings into liquid cash that you can easily use, instead of accepting somebody stereotyping us that we don't have a savings culture. It's a mindset, and there are many of these mindsets. I can spend a whole day on it. I list these mindsets. They are wrong mindsets, and we teach our children, and we cannot create a busting group of entrepreneurs if we keep believing in these stereotypes that have been imposed on us. It is designed to keep us poor, and we need to reject it. Now, it is important that entrepreneurs do not just develop their businesses, but create that spirit across Africa, collaborate and stimulate a continent where everybody has a free spirit to be able to do what is at the person's heart. Innovation, yes, but innovation that is not stimulated if the person doesn't have self-confidence, or if the person has ideas but is bogged down by a belief that unless he's earning $2 a day, he is poor, or that he has no experience or capacity, and therefore he has to go and have capacity before he can innovate. It is important that we focus on these simple things, because if we don't, we will have all the plans, we will have Agenda 2063 to be able to create that large volume of entrepreneurs that we need. And remember, I started by saying that there are about 4 ways that a nation or a continent can develop, and a 5th way that Africa is already revealing, which is that in spite of all the problems that is happening in Africa, and in spite of everything, we are actually developing in a way that is not being reported. What we need to do is to collaborate, accelerate it, change our mindset. As for problems, there will always be problems. The duty of entrepreneurs is to overcome problems. For me, it is not what happens that really matters. There will be COVID, there will be Ukraine war, all these things will happen. The difference is made by the mindset which enables us to respond to the problems in a way that turn those problems into opportunities. And I thought these are the few thoughts I will share with you. I hope that it creates a spirit in somebody to enable them to collaborate bigger across the African continent and turn this 1.3 billion people into the real market that it is, and not the small fragmented market that keep us poor. Thank you.
So we pick travelers. Our typical customers are people flying in and out of the country. So we pick those from the airport to wherever they're going and back. And we do this through a network of driver partners for whom we give regular business and improve livelihoods. They can book through WhatsApp, they can call us, they can email us. You know, we just try to make it as simple and convenient, as seamless as possible for our customers.
Welcome aboard the safest airline in Africa. With industry-leading safety measures to protect your well-being. The first in Africa to earn a diamond standard of safety. Offering a more contactless, safe, and seamless experience. Delivered with a smile by Africa's first fully vaccinated crew. Creating special memories that bring the joy back to flying, so you can continue making memories with your loved ones. Book your flight with RwandAir today. RwandAir, the safest airline in Africa.
RwandAir, fly the dream of Africa.